Welcome to episode number 301 of Destination Linux. Destination Linux is a video podcast from the Tux Digital Network. If you're new to the show, Destination Linux is a podcast perfect for all experience levels. Whether you're brand new to open source or a guru of sudo, this is the show for you. My name is Ryan.
I'm Jill.
And I'm Michael.
On this week's episode of Destination Linux, we're going to discuss our experience with the latest Ubuntu 22.10. That's right, we're doing a deep dive, a whole review of this distro we all hop to. We're going to give you the good, the bad, and not the ugly, but rather our hopes. We'll keep it positive, our hopes for the distro, if there's any of those in there. Then we're going to take a look at Fedora 37 and all the treasures hidden inside the latest release. Plus, we have our tips, tricks, and software picks. All of this coming up right now on Destination Linux. This week, our community feedback comes from Nick. And if you want to send in your own feedback, you can go to tuxdigital.com/contact to get in touch with us, or join the Tux Digital community forum by going to tuxdigital.com and clicking on the forum link on the top of the page. Nick is responding to our discussion about privacy and tracking, and he has some interesting insights to share with us. Nick says, I work as a developer in the financial service industry and just wanted to let you know that this tracking is already taking place, even if you're not using these loyalty systems. We're talking about those loyalty cards at like Kroger and grocery stores and those type of things. Using the card you pay with can uniquely identify you by the name and last four digits of the card number. Then using some data brought in from other financial institutions like TransUnion or Equifax, they can build a profile on you. Let's take Walmart as an example. They're using ML to identify faces with their security cameras when you walk in and track the path that you take in their store. They also use the data and the info that they get when you check out to build a profile on you as a customer. They were testing expanding the system in 2019 with extra cameras, and the whole thing is extremely dystopian feeling. I don't know why. What's wrong with having a bunch of big brothers watching everything you do? It just
the
feels
watchful
natural.
eye just makes me feel more comfortable.
It's about your safety and the
Creepy.
safety of children. That's why we do this. So they go on to say, unless you pay with cash at stores, and even then, not always the case, it's extremely difficult to maintain your privacy at retail stores. Small mom and pop shops aren't even safe from this. Computers like Square that make point of sale stations for these places collect and send this info back to Square so they can see what you bought and the different types of stores you visit and those things. I've noticed this. A lot of these stores, small mom and pops, are using Square. And then they have these loyalty programs. They're like that you have to fill out all these screens, or they want you to fill out all these screens. And they make like the skip button super tiny in the bottom corner where you can't see it and all of that. And they're just doing all these new ways to kind of build loyalty. And they sell it to the restaurants or the stores as like, hey, now you can, get a list of all your customers and be able to market and reach out to them. But they're also double dipping because they're taking all your data and selling that stuff back as well. Michael, I was so proud of you when we went to Micro Center. So
Thanks, buddy.
talk about that story there with the high pressure sales that you were under.
It was so high pressure. I mean, I barely was able to get out from under it. It was crazy. So what happened is that we were purchasing something at Micro Center, and they asked me for the phone number, and I said no, and that was it. It was super high pressure, but
So
it was
high
funny.
pressure.
But
I didn't know what to do. I thought security was going to come, cops were going to swarm. I heard helicopter up above.
exactly, Big Brother
they
was
were
just
freaking
super
out.
intense at Micro Center. But it was funny because at the time, my reaction, they were like, "Hey, what's your phone number?" I was like, "No, like you don't need that." And because it made me laugh of like, I'm just buying this one thing. I don't even live here. There's not even a Micro Center in my state. I don't know. And when we were walking out, Ryan's like, "I'm so proud of you."
Oh,
what?
I was.
Aw, I am too, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I tell this to all of my friends, and listen, you do it in a nice way always, and you did it in a very nice way. We're trying to be funny and kind of talk about it, but really it was like, no, thank you, and then we moved on.
Yeah. No,
But that's as simple as it is, because I don't want to make anybody in retail's job harder, and I know that they get a lot of pressure to try to capture this information and anything else, but
And we also know that they don't personally care if you say no.
they don't care. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just say no thank you, when they ask for email, phone numbers, that type of stuff. But this person's correct, even if you're just swiping your card and they're not even asking for email and everything else, you've got transactions that are being built on you.
Yeah.
I know in my family, we've moved to a cash system. So we get cash out every month, and that's the money that we spend. It helps us to make sure that we stay within budget, most importantly. But number two, cash is just, it's so blissful compared to a credit card because you actually see something tangible leaving. Whereas otherwise, I'll be like Brandon from Pseudo Show and have 8 new pieces of hardware. And I'll be like, I don't know how the credit card statement got so high. So, the cash is and if I buy something online, I just fold one of those physical bills and use it for the next month so that, if I do those transactions. So yes, these things are very tricky and there's a lot of ways they're working on getting your information. Even just walking in the store now, they're tracking and getting your information. So I don't know. This is a tough situation to overcome. We desperately need privacy laws to protect people. And if you had somebody who was just staring through your window, they're like, hey, don't mind me, I'm just collecting information about what you're doing, you would have a problem probably with that. But somehow we're okay with it everywhere else we go. And it's just not right. So.
Oh, yeah, this is unfortunately so true. And thank you, Nick, for bringing this to our attention. In fact, speaking of cash, Ryan, me and my hubby pay cash for everything. And we don't even have a real credit card because we pay cash for everything.
I thought you were going to say you use Michael's credit card instead because that's what I do.
Yeah,
that explains it.
I have the Chase ATM cards. And in fact, me and my hubby set up a separate account just for doing online with Amazon and going retail shopping. So we have a separate account just for that.
Actually, it's a good tip. Having multiple bank accounts is a good tip because you can isolate and
absolutely
just categorize and organize much easier that way.
Well, credit cards are dangerous on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
They're dangerous from the fact that you're handing over the physical card to people, which does get copied. This is a big thing going on. And then even on websites, you're assuming, you're hoping that their stuff's secure. We've seen thousands of instances where it's not. There are a lot of ways people utilize temporary credit cards or different things that only have a certain amount of money. You load cash on them, but work like a credit card, the different things like that. Ultimately, this is a little outside of what Nick was talking about, but there are definitely options. Maybe we'll cover it in another. We've covered it in few past episodes. Maybe we'll cover some ways you can avoid some of this stuff in future episodes, including maybe painting your face with that special paint that reflects the cameras back at them. That could be a thing, so they can't track you in stores.
I mean, that's the thing that's the thing in movies and TV shows.
I've seen it. Yeah, like Splinter Cell video game, they do that. So it's got to be a real life thing. Maybe we'll test it out and we'll do a live stream.
Yeah, see if it works. We'll walk into a Walmart and say, "Hey, can we see your security footage and see if it worked?"
See if it worked.
What?
Oh my goodness. I have had friends who worked at Walmart and told me about this, so I don't step foot in there.
That's probably just a good life hack tip.
Yeah.
Don't step foot.
I think the whole tracking thing is interesting, and it makes me kind of appreciate the GDPR more because there are certain things in Europe that you can do that they have to request your permission before they do it, whereas in the US they just do it because it's automatic. So there is that, but I also wanted to give you a little bit of a pro tip. So because we're in a society now that, wearing face masks is commonality, you could, go into the store wearing a face mask and no one's going to think twice about it now.
But see, that's not even true because the AI now has become so sophisticated that it just picks up your eyes and is able to identify that way because that was an issue.
That's fine.
So that mask does nothing for that.
Another pro tip: mask, sunglasses, hoodie. Boom.
Then you look like a bank robber, and then you're gonna get followed ever. Just put a ski mask over your face when you walk in the store.
All you need is a balaclava, and you're good. That's it.
Yeah. All right. I'm glad we solved it.
Woohoo!
The amount of value we offer the community with our tips is it's really priceless.
I mean, you can't really ask for more. We're still going to give you more later in the show because we have our software picks and our tips of the week still. So much this episode.
So much
welcome.
value.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Now, if you're curious about data collection and you want to collect your own data on Ryan when he goes to your website, you could set up your own analytical software on a droplet by going to do.co/tux2022. There's lots of great software if you want to track.
An ethical one.
An ethical one, like Matomo, for example. You could just quickly set it up in the marketplace, and it's really easy. And there's a lot of benefit to doing that. But also, there's so many other things you can do with DigitalOcean because it offers you a really nice, flexible way of having a cloud infrastructure that takes it out of your hands and allows them to do everything for you. So you can get back to doing what matters most, which is building apps for your business to grow and strengthen your business. They have tons of great stuff like a comprehensive portfolio of compute, storage, database, and networking products, and so much more. Like they have predictable pricing, robust product documentation, and developers love the services, especially like the marketplace, like I mentioned, because you can get all sorts of great software really quick and easy to set up with just a few clicks, and then you're good to go. Plus, DigitalOcean, you can get support at every stage of growth where you have a team of one person like yourself or a team of thousands of people. DigitalOcean can help you get growing with their simple, powerful cloud computing. And as a listener of the Destination Linux podcast and a member of the Tux Digital community, you can get started for free. In fact, it's even better than free because DigitalOcean is giving you a $100 60-day free credit when you go to do.co/tux2022. That's do.co/tux2022. So again, go get started with your $100 60-day free credit on DigitalOcean's awesome cloud platform by going to do.co/tux2022. And we want to thank DigitalOcean for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux.
You know, a lot of people ask the question, does marketing really work? And I'm about to drop a bomb of knowledge. I mean, this whole show's been a bomb of knowledge, but I'm about to drop another bomb of knowledge that clearly it works because Michael goes to Ubuntu Summit and then we're doing a whole review on Ubuntu.
Now we're covering Ubuntu.
Yes. Yay.
Marketing works. See, they invited Michael. Now we all have to do the testing and stuff because of.
To be clear, we're not saying that was the purpose that they invited us, but it did work. You know, I talked about it in my talk I did an open source marketing talk at the Ubuntu Summit, and in the talk I mentioned how this is not really what they're meaning to do necessarily by doing this conference, but it did make me think about it and set up, Ubuntu or Kubuntu in my case on my machine. And that is, there's so many different ways that marketing is undervalued and underappreciated. So, check out that talk if you want. It's going to be, we'll have a link to the Ubuntu on air version for it if you want to check that out.
Yep. And interestingly, though, while that's a funny story to say that it helped, and I think it did, I was actually already switching because Ubuntu finally put Pipewire in, which we're going to talk about in it.
Oh, yeah.
It's the big thing I was waiting on. So that was one of the big holdouts. Every time Ubuntu had a new release, I was like, don't have Pipewire. I can't really go to it because I need it for how we do the show and things. We're going to get into that in a moment. Jill, you didn't really need any marketing because you have 800,000 machines. Yeah. So you have Ubuntu installed on at least some of them already. Yes. So there's that.
Yeah. Including my main broadcasting rig I'm on right now. I use Ubuntu LTS, or right now it's Ubuntu Mate.
And you've been using that since at least last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been using it for game streaming since 2014 and for podcasting since 2017.
And why stick with it, Jill? Why not distro hop on your main machine like crazy, like most normal Linux people?
Oh, well, I love the stability of Ubuntu, and it's a solid Debian base. Debian is one of my favorite distros of all time because it works on all different architectures and a lot of my older machines.
Yes, I wonder why Jill has such a big fan base, by the way. It says everything. When I said that, she was like, "Oh," I felt like she was like, "Oh, you're stupid." But let me tell you about why.
No, Ryan, I didn't mean it that way.
I'm teasing. All right.
For me, also, I use it as a platform to run all my favorite X window managers on. Yeah. While I'm doing Destination Linux, like Window Maker, Flexbox, Enlightenment, TWM, and even Rat Poison.
I knew it. Yeah. I knew you were going to say Rat Poison. Yeah. Well, let's get into our review of Ubuntu 22.10. I want to start with the installation experience. As I mentioned in the prior episode when we were just talking about the release of this, nobody even comes close to Ubuntu's install. Like, it's not even, to me, a competition. When you look at the ease of going through the screens, the ease of even getting to the advanced settings within there, just the overall flow of the installation, nobody does it better than Ubuntu, in my opinion.
Oh, I totally agree. It's kind of crazy how much different it is in depending on certain installers compared to Ubuntu. It's just, simple point and click, and also there's different options, like different flavors have different ways they do the installers, but it's all still the same experience of just, start and go. And you don't have to worry in most cases about like doing partitioning and all that stuff. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And that's awesome.
Their automatic partitioning is just on point. Like it seems
so
seems
easy
to be in my head and know exactly what I want to do every time, no matter how weird I've set up my system. If there's a blank drive sitting there, it's going to pull that blank drive and be like, hey, this is the one you probably want to install it on. Yes, that makes sense. Whereas other distros are like, oh, you want to overwrite this other operating system over here? Is that where you want to start? No. There's a blank
delete this entire drive?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to install part on the full drive and part on the blank drive? And like you see all these weird things happen with installers, but Ubuntu just seems to get it right every time.
I also like the fact that some of them have the minimal option or the minimal install.
Yes.
That's really nice because it allows you, for those who don't know, it basically removes a bunch of the default settings. And if you already know what applications you want and you don't need the majority of what comes by default, you can do the minimal and get, a kind of a more clean slate sort of thing. And if you don't know, then you get a nice options of having all these default options to see what applications are available.
Yeah. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why Ubuntu is so user-friendly and recommended for new users to Linux. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it is one of the driving forces to Ubuntu's awesome adoption when it came out back in 2004. Ubuntu really revolutionized ease of use on Linux.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because when we were talking about, using Ubuntu just in general, I've been using Linux for a very long time, but I can say that Ubuntu was the first one that allowed me to use it as a primary option. Mm-hmm. So, and also exclusively at one point as well, because for a while there were not that many options. And when Ubuntu came around, they made it a lot easier.
Yeah, and your sound cards worked out of the box, most of them.
That was nice.
Who needs
yes.
that?
Who needs sound cards?
Right. And who needs Wi-Fi or any of that stuff working? It's not that important. All right, so let's talk about the first start experience. So we got the installation. I think we all unanimously agree the installation is great. I'm going to be that guy, though. So I know someone's going to want to respond to my discussion here and say, I installed Ubuntu and I didn't have that problem. Congratulations. Right. I'm going to talk about my experience with Ubuntu.
Okay, let's see what problems you're talking about.
Yeah, so my first annoyance, then maybe annoyance is a little harsher word. My first issue that I ran across is Grub was hidden by default. And I'm talking about Ubuntu proper here. So this bothered me, not because I don't know how to go in and change Grub to have a timeout that's longer, but Ubuntu, we talk about that new user experience, Jill. Someone goes in, the first thing they're going to want to do with Linux is probably dual boot. And Grub being hidden by default removes that whole ability for them to see their Windows partition, which is going to immediately make them panic and go, oh my God, what happened to Windows? And so I don't know if this is just my machine or if this is a new thing on all installs where they're hiding Grub by default. But any distro considering this, I would say I would ask them to reconsider that because I know it makes a cleaner experience. But I think when you're looking at, maybe it's an option during install, by the way, where you could just say, do you want to skip Grub or hide Grub and just go immediately there, and you just kind of leave it off by default. So if somebody knows what it means, they could click it or something like that. But I just think that's a bad move for a new user.
That's an interesting point.
That's odd. Yeah, and really good point, Ryan. For me, usually Grub is visible by default when you have multiple OSs installed and they are detected out of the box. With all the LTS releases I've used, that's been the case. I have some machines that have like 20 different distros on them, and Ubuntu always, finds everything. And I actually installed Ubuntu 22.10 in a GNOME Boxes VM as well as on a 3-year-old laptop, but I wasn't installing it with other OSs. So
you didn't notice that was an issue?
Yeah, I didn't notice. I'm so sorry, Ryan.
No, Neil in our patron chat is saying that was introduced a few years ago, that hidden menu, so that may be a thing, but I would recommend them actually not do that. Maybe again, put an option in the install there.
Yeah. It was an interesting point you made about the new user being kind of worried about it because they would like, what happened to my Windows? And that's I didn't even think about that until you said it. That's a very interesting point.
True.
But I did want to say, Ryan, I installed Ubuntu and I didn't have that issue.
So you're that Twitter user that tells me, hey, I didn't have the issue. Like, I don't know what to even say to people when they do that. Like, I don't know. Oh, you're right. You caught me. I was lying. Like, I don't know.
Uh-oh.
You have a better machine.
I will, even though I was giving you a little bit of a hard time, Ryan, I will tell you the reason why I didn't have that issue is because I installed it on some isolated drives. So the only thing on those drives were the installs I did. And I also have this FlexiDock, which is a device that you can install into your desktop that allows you to have multi-boots. So you can easily just like turn a drive off and on or swap them out whenever you want to. And I made a video on that. I'll have it linked in the show notes if you want to check it out. It's a really cool way to kind of do multi-boot without having to deal with the headaches of multi-boot. Although you're not going to be able to do that with like an M.2 or any of that sort of stuff. So, it's pretty cool. But that's the reason why I didn't have the issues is because I didn't do the multi-boot in the same way.
Yeah. So I think that's something that would be interesting to fix. Moving on to the desktop experience now. So once I got Ubuntu installed, I just want to take a moment and say the wallpaper this go around, the other go rounds have been good too, but this go around, the wallpaper selection has been on point. Like the artists who are doing the work for Ubuntu's wallpaper, I just want to give you all a mad shout out. I gave you guys a shout out on the last episode, but it's freaking beautiful. Like the pictures you all are creating are absolutely beautiful to the point where I'm actually using one of the things I do actually customize on my machine, believe it or not, is wallpapers. One of the rare things.
Whoa. How, you're saying you don't leave everything default? I don't even know you anymore.
Yeah. I've changed, Michael. I've grown up.
I've changed.
Well, with Ubuntu, I can leave the default wallpapers. And the one I specifically like isn't the one that it first boots into, but if you right click on your desktop, if you're in the GNOME version, and then you set your wallpaper, there's one that's got what is the animal called? Gazelle or whatever it is, sitting on this plane
Kudu.
with this, with the sun set and all of those things. It's gorgeous. The Kudu, Sudo Kudu is absolutely beautiful.
I like the Kudu that you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Kinetic Kudu wallpapers are stunning as well, Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very nice.
Really
I mean, the effort put in is you can tell that they're not just kind of like, it's another iterative version or whatever. They did put in effort into their wallpapers, which is always nice to see.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for me, it was so comforting actually just boot up classic Ubuntu for the first time and see the sidebar dock that we have been used to for so many years on Ubuntu. It's like,
oh, Jill, in app tray indicators by default. Like,
what?
Yeah.
I know.
What?
It's amazing.
I know.
GNOME with a system tray? What?
Yeah, with a system tray. And I really like the GNOME 43 quick settings and being able to use it in Ubuntu is sweet. And honestly, this was the first time I used GNOME 43 on a laptop. And I love that you could access the power profiles with the quick settings in the top right of the GNOME panel. It's just that was awesome.
Adding features that GNOME added in this recent release, there were some really good features. They need to add the app tray and not make it an extension thing. But there were some good features like the sound input chooser and those type of things.
Yes.
And it made a difference, I feel like, in Ubuntu's overall feel. And Ubuntu did a great job, I think, of choosing good default settings along with their launcher and stuff too, which makes it very invitable. Yep.
I agree. And I just want to state that while I did try Ubuntu proper a little bit, it's not really my sort of thing in terms of desktop. And since we're talking about desktop, I just want to let everyone know that I use the Kubuntu version,
Yes, you do.
22.10,
Now,
and
what's
it was
Kubuntu?
great. Oh, it's just interesting. It's pretty new. It came out about 6-7 months after Ubuntu in 2005, so it's fairly new. And it's a KDE Plasma version of Ubuntu. It's Kubuntu.
Isn't that like the third most popular desktop in the world or something like that?
I think you're talking about Plasma. No, see. The thing is that Plasma is not. It's super popular, but also people just don't understand the pure value that it offers. So we're fixing that soon, and Kubuntu is in the forefront of making that happen. So the first experience of Kubuntu is one of the best. Actually, it's like one of the best out of the box experiences for KDE Plasma.
Yeah,
and I have been enjoying it the whole time. Also, it's kind of interesting because I have contributed to Kubuntu in the past, and they have a lot of great changes that I requested that some distributions
it's all
of
because
Plasma.
of you.
No.
Is that what you're trying to say?
No, absolutely not.
Could everyone just take a moment and stroke Michael's ego for a second so that he can feel better about himself?
I would never do
Aw.
this. That's ridiculous. I would never. So what I'm saying is that the team of Kubuntu listens to their community and does changes that they feel is a good change, and I appreciate that. Yes, a lot of the changes were from me, but I didn't make them. I just suggested them. And if you try Kubuntu and you say, yes, this is a great out-of-the-box experience, I would just say, you're welcome on behalf of Kubuntu's team who actually did the work.
Aw.
There you go.
Great job, Michael.
Yes, we're very proud of you. Actually, you
Yeah.
are correct, though. Kubuntu is one of when people want
Yes.
they want to see how good KDE can be. I think Kubuntu is a really good starting point.
I typically suggest Kubuntu for anybody who wants to try Plasma and hasn't done it before because it's probably going to be the best out of the box, like not having to change a lot of stuff and that sort of thing.
Okay, not to be that guy again, but the App Store.
Not to be that guy.
The App Store is still slow, and I'm running this on a beast of a machine, like a really beastly machine here. This is not a slow computer at all. This is a very, very fast, expensive computer, and the App Store is insanely slow. Like, specifically when you click into any category, like, you know how they have categories for audio or design or whatnot? It just like sits there forever to the point where I actually went and tested my internet connection because I'm like, maybe it's my internet connection. I actually thought the App Store was broken, but eventually after like 15 to 30 seconds, it actually will load. Now, the initial like pictures, you know, where it's like editor's choice or things when you open the store, that's fast. It's when you click into the category, you kind of got to wait and wait and wait and wait. And then it kind of fills in eventually.
So it has a delay with the population of the categories?
Those apps. Yeah, like it's maybe the server on their side. Now, it could have been a bad week last week because most of it was last week. Maybe they had some server issues or something else going on. I could test it here when somebody else starts talking and see if I'm still having that issue. But that kind of really stuck with me. And then Snaps worked really well this time, by the way. I opened Firefox on this bare metal install, and it opened immediately on there. However, right before this show, I had an issue with the Audacity Snap not being able to grab my audio, so I went with the Flatpak, and it worked. So I'm still on the fence about the Snap thing, personally. It just doesn't seem like it's completely complete. That ecosystem isn't complete yet. Yeah.
Just depending on the situation, like there's certain applications that are going to be better in Flatpak versus Snaps and vice versa, depending on what you need to do. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense that Audacity would have that sort of an issue because of the whole new Pipewire thing. Maybe they don't have the Pipewire connection with the Snaps or something like that, you know.
And yeah, Ryan, the Ubuntu software is actually always been a little slow with population, but it's actually faster than it used to be. And usually after you launch it the first time, it's slow. And by the time you launch it the second or third time, it usually populates faster.
Yeah. As an example, while you all were talking, I clicked on productivity. It took 13 seconds, I counted, to populate anything there. So I clicked on it, just waited, and then 13 seconds later, everything pops in. But some of the other categories, it was like 4 or 5 seconds. So there's something there they need to work on. Maybe I'll open a bug report.
Maybe.
And I found also that the Firefox Snap is now loading much quicker. In fact, I noticed it greatly improved actually on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS.
Yeah,
So
the team's definitely done some work in that direction. Again, looking at forums and things, there's still a lot of people talking about speed there, so I think there's more work to be done, but definitely some improvements in this.
Yeah, I mean, also they're aware that there needs to be some improvements in the speed of it. So, I mean, it's good that they're still working on it and they're acknowledging that this is an issue. And the Firefox Snap has been a lot faster than it used to be. I remember when they first announced it and made it default, there was a lot of complaints. And now there are still complaints, but it's a lot less these days. But I do want to say one thing about Kubuntu, because I was using Kubuntu for the most part in this test. I mean, I do like Ubuntu, but KDE Plasma is just what I like, so I'd use it. And Kubuntu has something that I didn't know that it seems to be new for this release, and it was a fantastic experience, and that is it has Flatpak by default. And I was really happy to see that. Now, it didn't have the FlatHub by default. It just had the Flatpak system installed. So I was wondering, like, how do they treat the FlatHub adding? Do I have to go through the process of like what I would normally do, kind of defeating the point? And the answer to that is no. If you just open the Discover store in Kubuntu and go to settings, it'll tell you like where you can get your sources. And there's this nice little button that says Add FlatHub. You just click it, put in your password, and you're done. You have access to the FlatHub. Fantastic. Like that was so awesome to see. And also the experience of it was super simple. Click the button, put your password in, you're done. Awesome.
I think honestly, Discover is one of the best software centers of any of the.
That's still a low bar because all of our software centers are pretty bad. So the best of software centers, I'm just being honest, like they're not very good. No offense to anybody working on that because they've gotten way better. It's just they're all kind of.
And it's also a very difficult thing to do, which we do appreciate you putting on the effort.
Yes.
But when you compare it to the giant companies that are known for their market stores and whatever, there could be some improvement.
Could use some work. Mm-hmm. Now, Jill, you don't use Snaps much at all.
No, in fact, I actually uninstall Snaps completely from my Ubuntu install. I'm Debian all the way. Debs all the way.
I'm Debs all the way. I love it.
What about Flatpaks, Jill? What about Flatpaks?
I do I have a machine that I use for testing when I test Snaps.
So she isolates her Flatpaks and her Snaps to another machine.
Correct.
Okay.
She isolates the isolated packages.
I like it. I like it. She has a self-contained computer for her contained packages. I like it.
I do,
Perfect.
Michael, but I do run app images on my rig here, so
Which is
I will
interesting.
Debs and because app images are a good way to test software. So
this whole story of Jill is starting to come together, Michael. Like Jill was really kind of famous everywhere we went when we were in California. She only pays with cash. She isolates her containers on an isolated machine. Do you remember that moment when we went to the restaurant and she handed a briefcase of cash over to the waitress and then came back with the package
weird.
And then
that briefcase and there was an envelope that just came and it was unlabeled. We didn't know what it was and then as somebody walked by and said, "Thank you, Jill. Thank you."
Thank you, Jill.
And we were like, well, this is kind of an awkward situation, but I mean, we get it. It's Jill.
Yeah, it's Jill.
Yeah.
Anyways,
to be clear for anyone who's curious, that is not remotely true. So
we may have taken a little bit of an exaggeration.
A little.
All right. The most exciting thing for me for Ubuntu, and the reason I was able to actually switch to it and try it, and I'm on it right now on the main production machine, is because they finally put Pipewire in here, which has been a big deal.
Yes.
I have to do a lot of complicated things. I've got a video on the DOS Geek channel. You can go check it out and see it. But it's not complicated, even though what we have to do is tie a bunch of rooms together to do this show, and patrons can listen in and watch the video while you're all watching on YouTube and Twitch. And this requires audio piping all over the place and these things.
We're fancy, people. We're fancy.
Pipewire makes it super, super simple. Now, I will say the Jack tools are not installed, so it's not quite at the level Fedora has it, where all of the Jack tool implementations and everything is there by default. That's not the case with Ubuntu, but I can use, instead of QJack CTL, this QW Graph tool, and that allows me to do the same thing, and it was more meant for Pipewire. So right now, everybody's piped in through the QW Graph tool. So while I don't have all of the same tools that I could in Fedora, I'm able to accomplish the goal, which at the end of the day, that's good enough for me.
It still has Pipewire's functionality of being able to use Pro Tools to some degree, which is fantastic. Now, I would love for that jack support to be included. Hopefully in the next release, they do have that, because the jack support of Pipewire is one of the things that makes Pipewire amazing. Now, Pipewire is already good and by itself, and it has these extra features, and there's a lot of improvements overall compared to Pulse Audio and that sort of thing. But having the access to jack and the jack suite of tools is kind of mind-blowing when you don't have to do any of the setup of getting jack installed in your system. So hopefully in the next release, and especially in the next LTS, that they have all of that settled, so we can have like the full-blown Pipewire, because Pipewire is bae.
Yes, it's awesome.
What does that mean?
And it worked really.
What is bae? Like
Bae-
Cool.
bae-
people
Cool.
drive up
Awesome.
to it and drop off packages? Like,
It's
what
just
is that?
bad.
A bae?
No, it's cool.
That's cool. Bae is cool
It's
now.
dope.
Is that what I'm supposed to
Bae-
be taking away from this?
Bae is a term of affection. Now, and now you're making it really
You
weird.
know why? How it's so hard to learn English. Like people will tell you when they're trying to learn it, it's so hard. And it's because we keep making up stupid words. Like we're still making. There is no settled language. It's still constantly being made. What is bae? It's so bae. What does that even mean?
Ryan, just stop being a muggle.
Yeah. Muggle.
Is that some Harry Potter thing? Oh, you never saw that movie. Never mind.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
need to,
it is-
because
it is a muggle?
muggle legit is in the dictionary now.
It is,
Yeah. So
Whatever. Moving on.
And Pipewire actually works great while gaming or watching YouTube and for all your audio needs. It worked
Yes.
great out of the box on Ubuntu 22.10.
I saw some people on Reddit talking about the fact that they didn't know that Ubuntu had moved over to Pipewire.
Yeah.
And then people were replying back, that means we did it right. So,
Yeah.
like, because you don't even
That's the
notice
best
that it was
compliment.
switched. That's
Yeah.
a great compliment there.
that's one of the reasons why Pipewire is so impressive, because like when you implement Pipewire, or you get Pipewire in a default setup, if you try to implement it yourself, you will see there's some issues. But when you have the distro by default, that's why we were so excited to see Pipewire by default in Ubuntu, and also why we've been wanting that to happen for a very long time, because the value that Pipewire offers is so good, and at the same time, it's not necessarily a drop-in replacement, but it feels like it. And that's what's so interesting about it.
So some other things I noticed, gaming with Lutris and Steam worked very well in Ubuntu, so mad props to them for that. I like how snaps have permission controls, which are very easily accessible from within the store, which makes sense. So if I go into the store and I install a snap, right there will be a little cogwheel that I can click, and I can set permissions for the snap of what it can access, what it can't. That's very easy, very smart way, I thought, of handling that. And one of the other things I love about Ubuntu is just the documentation, not necessarily their documentation, which is good. I mean, it's not arch good, it's good. But the fact that so many people use Ubuntu, that you're definitely probably going to find an answer for your problem searching for it. So that's one of the advantages. It's a first-class citizen when it comes to software availability as well. Like Jill said, she can just uninstall snaps and just use Deb. And that's because it's kind of everybody. If you're going to have an application on Linux, you're probably going to start with the Deb file or have a Deb file for it for install.
I also like the fact that Ubuntu gives you options to make changes if you want to in a lot of cases. Like, for example, you're talking about the snaps having permission controls. There was one thing that snaps did and for people were, since the beginning of the snaps format becoming popular, a little bit of backlash for it, of not being able to control when updates happen. And recently, Ubuntu announced that they have made it where you can hold off updates for as long as you want on whatever snap you want. So they are listening in that situation, and that's great. And also the documentation thing that you mentioned is pretty cool, because they, in addition to all the documentation that's out there in general, just because a lot of people use it, they have now put a lot of effort into their documentation themselves, as well as they have a documentation lead that they hired who literally created a framework for documentation. And
I saw this talk recently that was really interesting, where the person's like, Raise your hand if you don't use Arch, but you've used ArchWiki to solve some of your problems.
That sounds so familiar. Oh, it was me. It was me.
Yeah. And almost the whole room raised their hand, right, Michael? And
It was about 80%. Yep.
Yeah.
And it
So,
was
I
interesting
mean-
because the other people,
Yeah.
I talked to a few afterwards, and they said they didn't raise their hand because they used Arch.
yes, there you go. But it shows you how important documentation could be, and I think it's awesome they're taking some steps to even have better documentation there. When it comes to issues, like overall, just concluding with issues, my main issue with Ubuntu remains the same. Snaps are not my favorite. I don't hate them, but they're just barely okay to me. And hardware enablement is too slow. It falls behind Fedora. It falls behind Arch.
true.
It falls behind OpenSUSE. Their hardware enablement stinks. So if I go and get a new motherboard tomorrow, the new AMD processor, new Intel, not even brand new, maybe 6 months old hardware, I've had experiences multiple times over my years in Linux where it just won't work in Ubuntu but it will work in Fedora Arch because the hardware enablement is just so slow. So if you've got a stable platform, you want a stable platform, you're not changing out your hardware to anything new, Ubuntu is like an amazing experience. But those are my two big issues with Ubuntu right now.
Well, for me, snaps are a hit or miss. Like they're both fantastic in certain cases and also sometimes kind of annoying. You know, if you're using snaps on other distros, they can be more cumbersome because like the fonts are not loading or something like that. But overall, there are times where I wanted to use a software and they only had a snap, and I'm very thankful that there is a way to use that software, though. So in that sense, I do appreciate snaps. The hardware enablement thing that you said is something that I think is probably the most critical piece of Ubuntu and their release cadence. Of every 6 months, you get updates to the hardware enablement. And for some people, that's not fast enough. Like you were talking about, like people getting new hardware. If it's brand new hardware, you're going to be waiting 6 months to even use the distro that is most commonly recommended for people. And that's disappointing. I wish there was a way that they could do the hardware enablement stuff much faster to support these types of hardware so that people who are on the latest and greatest can more easily get into Linux because of it being one of the go-to options. And personally, everyone knows that I am like just crazy about updates. I love updates. I do it all the time. So I need to have all these new updates, as fast as possible. Right, Ryan?
Yes,
I'm known
you.
for that.
That's
Yeah.
you. Back, what are you on? Fedora 35 still? But anyways,
Yes, 35.
one of the things I do want to mention too, because a lot of people say, well, it's not a big deal. I use hardware, not people like you, Ryan. I use hardware from 15 years ago. Eventually, your hardware will break. You will go to the store to buy a new machine. At that point, Ubuntu may not work for that machine. So at some point, everyone gets a new machine. And so it does affect everyone, even people who aren't hardware addicts like me and Jill. So
Yeah.
it's something.
Well,
And me, right?
there's one thing, a request I can make.
I'm on the
I
show.
download the new Mesa drivers with a PPA, and if they included that in this, but if they included something easy for the beginner to do that in the software center, then you can have updated, those updated Mesa drivers. So whenever I get a new AMD card, I do that on my Ubuntu machines.
Yeah.
But I know how to do that. The average user doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah. The
Type in this
beginner
really
doesn't
long,
know.
confusing, complicated command that tends to break on updates at times and cause
And
other
also
problems.
swap out
Yeah.
your kernel or your drivers and good luck.
yeah.
I mean, there are
Yeah.
times where I look at these tutorials and I'm kind of like, well, this is an unfortunate situation still, even though it's in some cases technically possible. It's just not practical for most people. So that's really the big issue.
And that's
and
the issue. Yeah.
there's a lot of things like, for example, Kubuntu. I did need to use a PPA in order to get the latest version of KDE Plasma because they have this backports PPA system. It
Yes.
depends on where you get the PPA, Ryan. So,
As an
but for the most
AUR
part-
user, I am shocked you would use PPA. It's completely unsafe.
And you can compile the latest
that doesn't
kernel.
even compute. Like I don't even get
Yeah.
it. I don't. That what?
Yeah, you can compile the latest kernel as well, which I've done. But that takes knowledge of knowing how to compile. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we
Okay,
just
so-
want Ubuntu to think about like maybe improving the speed of which they already do that.
Yeah.
The hardware enablement they do is good. We just would hope that if they did it faster, it would be easier for
even Pop!
people who are getting new hardware.
Has done better in hardware enablement than
Yeah.
Ubuntu. Like they've put patches in
The
for
newer
AMD
kernel,
and things and this stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, it could be done. In conclusion, Ubuntu has a nostalgia that draws me in like an old 90s cartoon. Like I install
Nice.
it and I remember what it
Yes.
was like getting into Linux for the first time. So I will always have love for it. There was nothing super innovative in it, but it's static and it's predictable. And that's something really nice I've come to learn with production machines or people like Michael who rarely update their computers anyway.
We just talked about how I update all the time. I mean, come on. We just talked about that.
Yeah, so I would love to see a couple things. I'd love to see Ubuntu take some risks again. I'd like to see them do more innovation on the desktop. I think they could easily become king of the desktop again, at least in my mind and with people's hearts. I'm enjoying my time with Ubuntu, but I'm one hardware upgrade away, I fear, from not being able to use it. So that's always in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
But if static predictability is the goal, you're running servers, you have production machines. Ubuntu is just solid. It's solid and it's a staple of Linux. And I think the team's done a good job with what they have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And honestly, I've been using Ubuntu since Ubuntu 4.10 Warty Warthog 18 years ago. You remember that release?
I do. Ryan does not.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're
True.
talking about, Michael. I use it to this day.
For sure you do. Now, I would say that we talked about some other things about the hardware upgrade issues and stuff like that. There are some issues with Ubuntu in general, just like there are for any distro. But, Ubuntu has provided a lot of value to the community and also to us over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the whole 90s cartoon thing. So is
Yes.
like Ubuntu like the Ninja Turtles of
Yes.
Linux?
He-Man,
Oh.
Ninja Turtles,
He-Man, yeah.
Gargoyles. Like I'm talking good 90s cartoons here too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I first thought Gargoyles, by the way. That's just like the first thing that popped in my head. I don't know why,
See?
but it was.
I knew I liked you, Gargoyles. Like
Gargoyles is excellent.
Yes,
it has a
that's
lot
so
of the
good.
Star Trek actors do voiceovers.
yes,
I
so
did not
good.
know that.
I didn't know that either. Actually, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So I'm gonna go watch some Gargoyles after this.
Definitely. Well, you know what the first thing I installed on my new Ubuntu installation was, and I'm not even like doing this as part of the ad read, it really was Bitwarden. Like as soon as I get a machine up and running, the first thing I do is Bitwarden because Bitwarden
Makes
is my
sense.
access into everything else. And you need to be using Bitwarden as well. This episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by Bitwarden. Go to bitwarden.com/TUX. You have to go to that URL so they know we sent you. So it's bitwarden.com/TUX. And Bitwarden is a password manager software that allows you peace of mind knowing that your online accounts are secure. Bitwarden provides you the tools to store all your passwords in a secured vault, auto-generate those passwords and their usernames for you, automatically fill those in on the forms. So much less work, so easy and secure for your accounts. You can access your data across all your devices through a web browser, mobile app, desktop applications, even the command line. Bitwarden seals and encrypts your private data with end-to-end encryption. Here's the key part: before it leaves your device, so you know you're the only person with access to your data. Go to bitwarden.com/tux. You can sign up for free, completely free, and just start using it. There's no credit card, nothing needed, but you're going to want to support this awesome project. And for $10 per year, you get a gigabyte of encrypted file storage, two-step with login, YubiKey, U2F, and Duo. I use YubiKey personally. Vault Health Reports, Bitwarden Authenticator, priority customer support, all that for less than $1 per month. Come on. Go to bitwarden.com/TUX and get started. Thanks to Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux.
In the news this week, we have Fedora 37 is out. And as a person who is still using Fedora 35, of course I'm going to be updating very soon, Ryan. Very
like-
soon.
Yes.
4 years. At
At
least.
some point, I'm gonna have it.
I almost got his machine updated, folks, before he became a man baby and got sick at my house.
So he gave me the flu, people.
Oh.
So
I
what
was gonna-
happened was he gave me the flu and
Oh,
it ruined
no.
so many things. And
Such
we
a
were
man
going
baby.
to do upgrades. We were going to do hardware updates, and he gave me the flu.
I
Oh
feel
my
so
goodness.
bad for Michael. Michael's mom specifically. He's a 6'4" man baby. But I was
I'm
gonna
not
sneak.
a man baby. I did not call my mama for that. In fact, I told her to stay away because I didn't want to get her sick because I
Such a
care
good
about
son.
not getting people sick, Ryan, unlike some people. You know?
So Fedora 37, back on topic. Let's talk about
Oh, right.
that.
We're doing a show.
Man, baby.
Wow. I guess I call you Flu Boy.
Flu boy.
Patient Zero. You can call me
Patient Zero. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so Fedora 37 was actually originally intended to be coming out in October, but it was delayed a little bit due to some security issues that were being fixed in OpenSSL. And this made a lot of sense because Fedora was like, hey, we're going to push it back because these are some critical issues that we need to make sure that they're done before we publish it, because we don't want to have to, make people install something and then it's not be as secure as it can be. So it makes total sense that they would push it back like that. And when the OpenSSL patches came out, we found out the critical security was downgraded to high security. So it wasn't as bad as we initially thought. That's actually pretty good because it's always better for a security thing to go down. Right, exactly.
Good
and
job, Fedora.
Yeah, it's a good decision, and it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. But I still agree that the decision that they made to push it back was the right one.
Just to clarify, this wasn't a Fedora issue; it was an OpenSSL issue. Fedora was being
completely different,
cautious to make sure that you had the most secure system possible, which is awesome. But Fedora 37 is awesome. It comes with some really neat features. The best one is GNOME 43. Michael, tell us about how much you love GNOME. Michael.
So GNOME 43 is a really interesting thing. It comes with a new quick settings thing, and there's a new device security panel, and also KDE Plasma there's an addition in Fedora 37 for that as well, and it's fantastic. So I'm just letting people know.
There, huh?
I mean, for those who don't know that there is a KDE edition of Fedora, there is, and it's great. So just letting that just let that marinate for people.
What else is in Fedora, Michael?
GNOME? No. I'm not sure what you're trying to say. But I mean, there are some improvements to the latest version of the workstation. Like they've made updates to the GTK toolkit, which is great for those who like GTK and are not using the better toolkit, which is called Qt, and inside of KDE Plasma. For those who don't, aren't aware of that, you can go ahead and check that out, the KDE edition. And there's also some big improvements to the Fedora server, and that's great because it now produces KVM disk images to make running servers and a virtual machine much easier. And probably one of the biggest things that is in this release is Raspberry Pi 4 support is now officially available for Fedora Linux.
I love that it's available, except nobody can get Raspberry Pis. So, what a frustrating experience.
So unfortunately, the timing's not great.
They're supposed to be fixing the issue with the whole hardware problem, but yeah, that's kind of it is cool though. I can't wait to play with Fedora on a Raspberry Pi 4. I don't have to wait because I have 5 of them.
You have a 4? Okay.
I've got lots of them. I actually gave one to Wendy recently too because she needed one for an actual project, whereas mine.
So I don't have a Pi 4, Ryan. If you happen to have a spare one,
no, I gave one to Wendy. I will not give one to you.
I can give you one of mine, Michael.
No, that's
Jill.
okay.
Don't you do it, Jill. He's a man, baby.
That's the least you could do, Ryan. You gave me the flu. You should at least give me a Pi 4. Come on.
Oh, I have 2 Pi 4s, and then I have also the Raspberry Pi 400, which is the fastest Pi 4.
Yeah, that's a very cool one. Plus, Michael, you skipped to this part, but there are other Fedora spins as well. But we're not talking about a KDE spin.
There are a lot of good spins. I was just saying that KDE happens to be a really good spin. That's all I'm saying.
Huh. I wonder who on the show is a KDE fan. Write in to let us know.
Who knows?
You think the host is actually a fan of KDE. Fedora Comp Neuro, which provides tools for computational neuroscience and alternate architectures for ARM, Arch 64, Power, S390X, all of this stuff. You got so many spins out there. So don't just think when you go to the download site because you just see the GNOME version there that's all you got. Go check out those Fedora spins because they're pretty dope.
There's lots of them. In fact, there's a KDE edition if you weren't aware.
Yeah.
They're totally Bay.
The Fedora KDE is Bay for sure.
Totally Bay.
Don't be a muggle. Get Fedora KDE edition.
And there are actually 2 new Fedora editions as well. Fedora Core OS, not to be confused with the original Fedora Core.
No,
Fedora
I want
Core.
it to be. I want it to be. I love the fact that when they announced that Core OS was joining Fedora, I was like, yes, we get Fedora
I
Core
know.
back. Awesome.
We get it back.
For those who don't
so-
know, Fedora first started as being called Fedora Core.
Yeah.
So I just enjoyed that in general. It's just fun. I just enjoyed
It's really nice. And so, Fedora Core OS is actually the successor to Atomic Host. And it offers an automatic update mechanism, geared towards hosting container-based workloads, which is wonderful. And they also have a new addition, Fedora Cloud, which provides a great Fedora base to run in your favorite public or private cloud.
Nice. Also, this is really good. The Fedora Core is like a self-contained container-based thing. You
Yeah.
could actually put that on one of your computers so you can isolate your distro to isolate your
true.
packages
This is true,
for
Michael.
flat packs and stuff. Yeah, perfect.
Nice.
Lots of containers
Very
right
true.
there.
Fedora to me is just one of the greatest distros out in Linux right now. I think
100%.
it encompasses everything I want in a distro at this moment. There are other great distros. Do not get me wrong. I love Arch.
We like a lot
Ubuntu.
of distros, people.
Like 'em. But Fedora to
Love 'em
me,
all.
well, maybe we'll do an awards show towards the end of the year. Maybe we should do, and we
Interesting.
could send
That's a good idea.
a trophy with our budget. That trophy would be made of, well, I
Paper?
probably have to 3D a paper mache trophy to the Fedora team or whoever wins. We don't know who will win. It could be anyone.
Yeah, you shouldn't assume, right? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. We have to go through the committee and do like
Yeah.
an Emmys or Grammys thing or whatever. Like you can't.
But honestly,
Aw.
the Fedora team, not only their community outreach, but just their end product is
Yeah.
just been absolutely next level this year.
Fedora is fantastic, and also we know just like the Twitter thing about hey, I didn't have that problem. We also know that there was some issues, a few weeks ago where people were talking about Fedora doing something that wasn't at all what people were claiming it was, like saying they were ruining the desktop, and it isn't that big of a deal because the thing is that they still have support for those codecs.
Oh, that's the
Just-
codecs? Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
just
wondering where you were
not
going.
they still have support for those codecs. It's just not hardware accelerated support. That's the difference. It's not like you can't watch Netflix or anything. So when people like exaggerate stuff, I just wanted to clarify Fedora is still good, even though you may have heard something like that. It's pretty nonsense.
Yeah. So great job, Fedora team. Exciting release. Awesome job on 37. And also kudos for being willing to hold Fedora back, even though the issue didn't end up being as big as everyone thought. You did
Yeah.
the right step to take
Yeah.
a look, take care
For
of your
stability.
users, which is the
Exactly.
users.
It's good that they took the time to consider it. It's also good that the thing that they had to consider wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So good in both sides, all sides.
Do you dream of getting off this planet?
Yes.
All the time.
And you know what? When you go, when you take off on from this planet, you might want to use something really stable like Fedora 37 or Ubuntu 22.
That's what I would trust.
.10. Well, you can actually practice building a ship with this chill spaceship building game called Astral Shipwreck. Yes.
Shipwright.
Astral.
Shipwreck.
Now, shipwreck is what happens when I
That's when you're using Windows in your system.
So true.
Shipwright is when you're using
Yeah.
Linux.
Yes.
And I always read it as shipwreck. And yes, it's Astral Shipwright. And it's a game that lets you build and upgrade your personal ship to travel around a cool, strange planet. So the game is actually still being built out and developed, but there's lots of updates are promised. And people are already enjoying it. In fact, when I downloaded my copy, there was a new update just on Thursday, which
Nice.
brings new
Nice.
spacecraft equipment, new main drive, new advanced thruster, and a new large solar array to put on your ship.
Cool.
Very cool.
And it's really a really fun game. You can build your ship and add new components and then fill them with new modules and equipment and make your ship truly yours and put a nice coat of paint on it.
Nice.
Now they're saying, Michael, in the next 10 years, I saw an article, I didn't click in it and read it, and I don't even know if it was from a legitimate source, but I'm reporting on it here. Anyway, NASA said
Naturally.
that in 10 years, there will be a colony on the moon. I think we should be the first podcast on the moon, and we should do a fundraiser
Absolutely.
to send us all to the moon to do Destination Linux from the moon.
100%.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll
Especially
design
since
our
they
ship-
use Linux to get there.
Yes. And we're going to design
And
our
on the
ship
ship.
in Astral Shipwright.
I like how you were like you were
Ryan's doing
close
it.
to saying it right and then turned it wrong.
Yes. Because,
But
yeah.
I do think that's we definitely need to do this. That's absolutely. I also wanted to point out that sometimes Ryan is like, it feels like you're trying to find obscure games because this game just came out just like maybe like a couple less than 2 weeks ago, something like that. And also I was like, I wonder what the review's like. Now, to be fair, because it's so new, it doesn't have a lot of reviews, but it kind of made me smile. I was like, yep, he's putting in effort to find obscure things to talk about so we can promote it and give, a space for these types of games on the on the
Everybody hears about
podcast.
AAA stuff.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
I wanted to point it out because I just appreciate the effort you go through
Oh,
to do that.
Michael.
There you
Yeah.
go.
You're still a man baby, but thank you. I appreciate
You're still Flu Boy,
Aw.
but you did good on the you did good on the gaming part.
And I am just happy, Ryan, it's not a horror game. So that makes
Yes.
me happy.
Well, it
So-
would be horrible if I was in there designing a ship. It would be a horror game.
Yeah.
I think
Like
we'd be
Alien.
thrusting right into a planet probably with no direction. Ability to change direction. This reminds me of the Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah,
A little
absolutely.
bit where you're designing these ships, maybe not quite as advanced yet, but
Yeah.
more realistic looking.
Yeah, it looks more realistic, and the Kerbal Space Program has been around for a long time, so they've had a lot.
Amazing
of time to develop.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a really good game. So I'm looking forward to see what this Astral Shipwreck
Yes.
does.
Shipwright, Michael.
I know
Yeah.
He's talking about when he pilots. That's what everyone's doing.
exactly.
Yeah.
As when I try to build a ship, that's what it's called.
It's going to be shipwreck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is nice to have an easy game. Kerbal has a long learning curve, but it's a wonderful game, and I've enjoyed playing it. So this game you can just get right in and start building your ship. And there's never enough space exploration games for the dreamers and all of us, of course.
Agreed.
So everyone,
Never enough.
check this one out if you're interested in games with a little more depth and imagination needed. And it supports our Linux Penguins out of the box. And Astral Shipwright can be had for $9.99 on Steam. So
Not bad
I
for a game
suggest
like
it for a chill building experience.
There you go. In our software spotlight, we're going to talk about in your Ubuntu installation, you're in GNOME, there is an extension I want you to get, and that is called Simply Workspace. Now, all my friends out there that use i3, Polybar, and all of that, this is for you. You're going to love this. So even though you're in GNOME, you're not in your favorite i3, although you can install i3 very easily in Ubuntu, you can still have that workspace switcher, that nice in the indicator panel, like the i3 Polybar does, where it just has the simple 1, 2, 3, and you could switch between workspaces. And I freaking dig that. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite workspace switchers in a window manager. And so that's what this extension provides you for. And when you install it, you can thank me later because it's awesome. And I'm using it right now. That's where I keep all of the stuff we pipe in and all the audio stuff on another workspace. And actually, while we were talking, I could switch between workspaces by clicking 1, 2, 3, or how many workspaces you have. It's so nice. So nice.
Sweet.
It also helps you with counting, Ryan. It's so good.
Well, I can only get to 3, so I only have 3 workspaces, but my wife tells me if I keep practicing, I can get to that next number that comes
you
after
can-
3.
Well,
so I'm
you
working
can
it
go to
there.
4, and then you'd have 4 lights.
4, is it? 4.
Oh, my
Oh,
goodness.
the Star Trek
Oh
reference.
my goodness!
Jill.
Another Star Trek reference.
That is
Like,
so good. So good.
Something else that will be good is to check out the tip of the week. And that is, we're going to be talking about something that just to customize your system. And there's a lot of times where people who are, you kind of want to make it look a little bit more fancy. And the way you can do that is you could change icon sets, you can change your wallpaper like Ryan sometimes does, and you can also change fonts. A lot of people aren't aware that you can customize the fonts in pretty much your entire system by you can install special fonts. You can also do it in different ways that different distros have. So if you're new to Ubuntu or Fedora, then you can change by, for example, with Ubuntu, you can do sudo apt install fonts dash whatever the name is. So like fonts dash Roboto, and you can get the Roboto fonts installed into your system. There are other ways that you can install, like for example, if you're using Kubuntu or anything that has KDE Plasma, you also have the ability to use their font management system that's built into the system settings to easily install any of the fonts that you get. And you can just go download those fonts from wherever you can get them. For example, like the Google Fonts directory is a fantastic place to get fonts. And there's a lot of other ones. So go check that out. And also be sure to check out KDE Plasma, which has a really nice way to install fonts.
You know what? It's not easier than GNOME. Let me tell you what I do in GNOME. First, I go into GNOME. I launch settings. I look through settings to try to find fonts. I don't find any.
Right.
Then I go to my application launcher and I type in fonts. And then there is a program, so I launch it, but it just shows me what fonts are there, and there's nothing you can really do with it. But then what I do is I go and I open my browser and I search, how the heck do I change fonts in GNOME? And then I find that you need GNOME Tweak. So then I go and open Ubuntu Software Store. I install GNOME Tweak. And then once I install GNOME Tweak, I go in that and I search for where the font thing is. And then finally I can change fonts. That's how easy it is in GNOME.
That seems very easy. I'm kind of surprised how easy it is, Ryan. But for comparison's sake, if you want to install a font, what you do is you also didn't talk about downloading the font itself, so that's an extra step there for you.
I gotta do that.
So
too,
we'll just kind of talk about the KDE Plasma style. So what you do is
so complicated.
You go into system settings where all your settings are going to be, and then you go to fonts, and then you install them.
I don't get it. Does it make any sense?
I mean, it's so complicated, right, Ryan? It's so complicated.
It is. KDE is so confusing.
I use MLFM as root or PCManFM as root, and just drag and drop in the folder.
Yes, that's a little bit more complicated than the other stuff, actually.
I guess so, but it's still quick.
Still cool.
You have to know where the folders are, Jill.
Yeah,
so if someone who's new to Linux, they want like, I want to install a font. With Plasma, it's just a button and that's it. And with
nice,
it's a little bit more like, because they actually have to know what folder structure there is to put the fonts in. So I do think that once you already know, it's very easy to just drag and drop. But all I'm saying, is that the tip of the week.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the tip of the week is KDE Plasma.
Tip of the week is KDE Plasma. All right, someone cut Michael off. Cut his mic.
Okay.
Well, thankfully, we're at the end of the show. So a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. We're here every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern live at tuxdigital.com/live. The best part, everyone is invited to watch the recording of Destination Linux each and every week, and we can't wait to see you in the chat.
We also have our glorious patrons with us right now. We talked about it with Pipewire, where we have the patrons in a separate room that we connect our videos and audio and send it back and forth so they can be involved into it and they can watch it live. Now, you can watch it live as well, like Ryan said, but you also get the ability, if you're a patron, to watch it without any delay and also contribute in our patron-only post show, which happens every week after the show. And in addition to that, if you do miss it, you can't be here live, that's okay, because patrons get access to the unedited versions of the show. And you can become a patron by going to tuxdigital.com/contribute to sign up.
You know what? Scratch that record. Scratch that record. I'm going to say here, and I'm not asking permission, I'm just going to say it. The patron benefits are about to blow up. Like, we have this thing coming that's going to blow your freaking minds.
Yeah.
It's going to be unbelievable. It's coming. That's all I'm going to say. It's coming.
Aww.
We may tell the patrons after the show, but for those who are not patrons yet,
it's going to blow your freaking mind.
It's definitely, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. Also, something you're going to love is the Tux Digital Store, where you can go get awesome swag. We have
Swag.
t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers, hats, so much great stuff. And well, at least Ryan pointed to his hat this time. There's a lot of great stuff. Going to tuxdigital.com/store to pick it up.
And make sure to check out all the incredible shows here on Tux Digital. We have The Pseudo Show, This Week in Linux, the DOS Geek Channel, Linux Out Loud, Hardware Addicts, GameSphere, and our virtual Linux user group, Linux Saloon. So everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all these awesome shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching in the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
You know, I just want to mention Cubicle Nate does such an amazing job with Linux Saloon every Saturday.
does.
If you're one of those people, I know a lot of people are introverts and they don't know how to kind of get out there, that they want to build their network and things. Linux Saloon is a virtual lug that you can join. You can sit in that chat and not say anything or turn on your camera. You can kind of lurk, but then you can start slowly getting involved because it's so casual and so welcoming. What Nate does with that entire crew there, everybody that helps out to make Linux Saloon a thing. So it's just a really good place to chill and hang out every Saturday. Check out, make sure you're there at the Linux Saloon. And everybody, have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
Aw, love.
Most of you.
We'll see you next week.